Without further ado, Kevin Dow.
Choo-choo! Choo-choo! Get on board! The rail park is in Philly. Woohoo! I didn't know how I was going to start this today, but I felt like that was a little bit of a creative side. We've heard so many different things about the creative, the innovative, the technology. I'm going to talk about a park. I'm a guy who runs a nonprofit. So I had to figure out how do I get it in there, and that was the best I could do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the rail park. My name is Kevin Dow. I'm the executive director. I am the first and the only employee of the Friends of the Rail Park. I got a lot going. Woo! All right. I have got a lot going on. I need some help. I hope that after you all finish hearing this, you all are going to jump on our website and volunteer to do any number of things. Most importantly, get out your checkbook, get out your credit card, however which way you want to pay, support us. The Friends of the Rail Park, let me start there. We are an organization, a 501c3 nonprofit. We actually started out as two advocacy organizations. The history of the rail park, and it's interesting that we heard from Natalie, and she talked about the fourth industrial revolution, and we heard earlier about Thaddeus, about commons and about public spaces, and my project connects with that nicely. And so in the 20th century revolution, there were railroads. They were moving things back and forth. The Reading Railroad was one of which in Philadelphia. It operated by originally moving coal from the Susquehanna Valley into Philadelphia, which at this time was industrial America. And what happened was that they brought this coal in here, they began to grow their business, and then eventually got into the passenger business, and they began to bring people from what is in our Chestnut Hill neighborhoods, essentially. And I'll show you in a map in a few minutes. Long story short, that business went out of business. The Reading Railroad Company went out of business. It now abandoned lines that were sitting in our city, and two individuals came together who lived in the Calla Chinatown North neighborhood, began to dream, to imagine what they could do with these abandoned railroad lines. Rails to trails was now a big thing in our country, and this was about 15 years ago, and so they began to dream. So it's the power of two individuals to really shift and change a community, a city, to drive a specific outcome, and that outcome is the rail park. Their advocacy efforts worked. They came together, convinced all the stakeholders, all the planning documents, 2235, whatever you look like, have the rail park in there. And so after that advocacy effort came together, they then brought their two organizations together, and they created the Friends of the Rail Park about 5 years ago. My job as the first executive director, hired about 6 months ago, is to implement their dream. Y'all loving it? Let me ask, who has been to the High Line? Now, who has been to the rail park? All right, I'm not seeing the same amount of numbers there. Now, we know this is right in our backyard, so let me give you a couple of facts. When completed, it'll be 3 miles in total, 11 neighborhoods. We connect directly in 10. We like to connect to the 11th. 50 city blocks. Unlike the High Line that many of you all visited, it is both what the High Line is, an elevated portion. We call that the Viaduct. We also have 2 other sections that continue on, mainly on the western side of Broad Street. We call that the Cut. It's a below-grade open air, and then the tunnel. And these are the sections. And so when we get compared to the High Line, people say, well, what about the High Line? I said, well, we're twice the distance when completed, twice the distance, and double the length. We go through this area of Philadelphia. If you can see it, you can start up at 30th for Girard on your left. That's the tunnel in the dark green. It goes all the way down to about 21st Street. And then it becomes what we call the Cut in this brown, which goes from 21st Street to Broad Street. And that's the Cut is below grade, open air, and you can look down into it. Once you cross Broad, You see the green portion, that is the newly completed phase 1, and that's the beginning of the viaduct, which is the above grade elevated portion that is compared to the High Line. Each section, the tunnel, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about a little bit of these. Oh, this way. Got to make sure we do that. Come on. Up there it is. Okay. And then we got one more. There we go. Each individual. Let's go here. I got to remember I got to do that. The viaduct. Hold on. Pause with the cause. The viaduct is the most well-known section. So it is the elevated portion. It is about a mile long, probably just right around it. It runs from that broad street on the east side, goes a little bit along Callahill, and then it juts up north to 9th and Fairmount in that area. It is the most well-known section. Everybody really, really wants to do it. At the point of the end of phase 1, there is a kind of a triangle that would have originally gone into the Reading Terminal. That's part of our history. And that triangle is as big as and bigger than a national baseball field. So if you can imagine a baseball field as big as that, that's how much space is up there. And some of you may have been up there. I'm not going to ask if you have or have not, because it's not necessarily the legal thing to do, but it certainly is the fun thing to do. And I can't take you up there personally, but if you wind around the neighborhood, you might find a path through a gate or under a fence that will get you up there to enjoy the space. Let's go to the cut. So the cut runs between the streets at below grade. So when you go from Broad Street, you walk past what is now the Inquirer Building or the school district. They're being renovated, Inquirer Building renovated into the police headquarters. And you get to about 15th, 16th, walk up a little bit on the streets, all the cross streets. There are bridges that go across all of them. You can then look down onto the cut, and then you can see it go all the way through to 21st Street. It runs in the middle at that point through Community College, who educates 30,000 of our city adults, and we're proud to have a wonderful partnership with them and to reface their buildings to front the railroad. It is westward towards Pennsylvania Avenue, and that gets us to what I think is the best part, the tunnel. And how many people been in the tunnel? Now that's really not really illegal. Okay, but it is a wonderful, wonderful space. People are excited about the viaduct. I think there's some wonderful programmatic opportunities with the cut, but the excitement and the dynamic opportunities that we have with to be differential and unique comes with the cut. It is the longest section. It runs below Pennsylvania Avenue, if you're familiar. So if you're behind the Rodin Museum, and if you know the neighborhood, there's the Wawa on one side, it's the new Whole Foods in the middle, on the other side, and in between there's a triangle, and you can look down at that point. That is the end of the cut and the beginning of the tunnel. The tunnel then runs from that perspective all the way up Pennsylvania Avenue. It comes out around 29th Street, and then the rail eventually goes to grade level at around Popular, and then back down to below grade once it crosses or goes underneath Girard Avenue. Eventually, the rail crosses over Schuylkill River at the Cumberland Bridge and originally took you out to Susquehanna where that coal was. And so what we envision with the tunnel is some wonderful lighting experiments, sound, and things of that nature. You can see the light shafts. The light shafts were originally there for air. So steam engines drove the railroad back in the 1800s, and they needed to breathe. And so they created these light shafts, which still exist today, or these air shafts, which we are now using as light shafts. And so we will begin to think about how we program and activate this space. Isn't it wonderful? Yeah, it is. I got a big job. So we need to invest in public spaces, right? We need to create value. So there's a number of different ways. And oftentimes in my world, in infrastructure, government, economic development, we talk about placemaking. And in my view of the perspective, it's not necessarily about placemaking because it has the connotation that you're going to come into a neighborhood or to an area and make the place. Well, where this rail park exists, the place is already there. The community is already there. People have been living there for generations. So rather than place making, let's create value by place keeping. Can we do that? And keep what's there from the past and look at what's there now in the current, integrate the needs of who lives there, and then take the dreams and aspirations of the residents to drive what the future will look like and keep the place as it is, but adapt to the future. Invest in public spaces. I still haven't learned my lesson. All right, phase one, I talked a little bit about that. Phase one is a quarter mile of the full 3 miles. It is entry points, a number of locations. The easiest one to think about is at Broad and Noble. That is the intersection that's right directly across from the school district headquarters on Broad Street. And so if you stand there at school district headquarters, look this way, the entrance point is this. And it took us about $10.6 million. We still have about a $300,000 gap. Our friends at the Center City District is an organizational partner, a core partner that help fundraise and help manage construction and is involved with our daily activities to go forward. As we are one person, a 9-member board, volunteer advocacy, I need somebody with some capacity, and Center City District has it. And so they're helping us as we begin to think about the future phases. They're going to continue their role in that construction, in that capital stack, trying to find the resources and help us identify what is next. And I'm going to talk to you about that. So phase one, beautiful aspect. Kevin, learn your lesson at some point in time. This is what it looks like. This is at the end. So if you imagine my map, there was that triangle. You're looking here in this direction. We are looking over Vine Street into Jefferson Hospital, or where the original, and it still exists, the Reading Market Terminal. And so you've walked up here, and this is at the end here. And it's a lovely space. It was designed as a demonstration project. And so it's to demonstrate the type of materials we want to use, how we want to use the space, the things we want to do it. So we have grandstands there, so we want to hold public events. We want to hold conversations like this. We want to be able to bring art and culture in a very light and sound way, theatrical. We want to be creative, provocative, and forward thinking in the space. The materials are not original except for the structure itself. We just couldn't afford the materials and to do all of that, but we put them in a warehouse so that when we get to the rest, we can bring them out and be able to integrate original rail lines, ties into the future phases of the park. And so, but what we did was use the materials, the industrial look, the wood look, the sign. We even put a boardwalk in there because people, you know, from Philadelphia, we like the shore. And so right now, key point, if you've been there, if you can look at this, it's not conducive to bicycling. And that was a conscious decision. It is also a very conscious decision that we will never, ever do that again with the rest of the rail park. Okay? This is the narrowest most section, and I mentioned the High Line. The High Line, if you think about our L platform, is 2 directions. Our L platform goes east and west. Theirs, I think, went north and south, and then carved all through the city. And that's 2 rail lines in width. This section is about that same width, about 2 sections. Everything else is either 4 or 8 rail lines wide. And so as a result, we will be able to integrate bicycling, running, walking, and as my friends who walk along the Schuylkill Path or the Manioc Rail Trail right here, don't put the bicyclists on the same path as the walking folks, right? Because it gets kind of hectic on these paths, separate the 2. So we'll be thinking about that. But narrowest point, demonstration project to galvanize people. Hey, this is what we, all of you, can achieve. I learned my lesson. Keep on going. Increase in real estate value, value capture. We know that when we do these public assets like that, they increase value in the neighborhoods. One of the things that we've learned from my friends at the High Line is that they didn't think about that at the beginning. And it took them over phases, took them years. And you know, they got New York money and New York Times, so everything happens bigger and everything happens faster. But one of the things when they look back is that they didn't think about the value creation that they were doing, and consequently the displacement that was going to occur in the neighborhood for residents who had been there long term. We're learning from those mistakes. We're looking at how do we look at the rest of the development of the path and ensure that we can create value for the residents and the businesses that already exist there. Making sure that we maintain the cultural fabric that has been so important in our Chinatown community, where Phase 1 is located at. How do we engage the residents in the work that we do to create equitable access to any jobs that we might create? I don't know what they are, but we're going to create some over the long haul. Construction or park management or programming or whatever it may be. But let's remember to increase and value, oh, see, it worked that way, right? What's up with that? So this is a little bit high-level map. This is Phase 1. This was pre-construction, so this is what it looked like. This was going, you see that triangle piece? I said baseball field. That's the piece that is going into the Reading Terminal. And excuse me, I said that this was Phase 1. I apologize. The top portion is Phase 1. That's pre-construction. And so that piece there in the middle is what we would love to have as Phase 2. If we can get the money to put it together, but to create some open space in there. And then this path down here goes all the way up into the Fairmont East Poplar neighborhood. All right, this is the cut. This is at that intersection. This is being built while the Dalen is being built and the Whole Foods. So it's just an understanding of context of where we are. This is another picture. That's the beginning of the tunnel. All right, I went to my capture new value. This is the Viaduct. This is at Spring Garden Street. So this is what is Spring Garden Street would be right here. This building here was the original Spring Garden Street train station. This was the line that brought passengers in from the Chestnut Hill area. This was one of the stops. We'd love to be able to save that building. We don't control it. I'm going to talk about who controls the dirt in a moment, but we would love to be able to save that building. Right next door is another building which was the original headquarters of the Reading Railroad Company, and that's being converted by our friends at Arts and Crafts. Here is another viewpoint, Spring Garden Street. Spring Garden Street is being thought of as a greenway passage. I got so many facts in my head I can't remember the exact name. But imagine being able to go from the Delaware River all the way to the Schuylkill River is the Greenway Project. And that is what's being designed for the long haul. We will connect with that, therefore getting connected to the regional rail trail system in that aspect. All right, here are the neighborhoods. Let's see if this works. Boom, boom, bang, ah, okay. Now, if any of you live in any of these neighborhoods, you all need to be members of the Friends of the Rail Park. All right, we're going to bring this lovely urban oasis to all of you, plus all of Philadelphia. And quite honestly, we're at a national scale being compared to the High Line, the Belt Line, 11th Street Project, Chicago 606, a number of different projects around the country are doing it. I wanted to show this because our primary focus early is now community engagement. My role is to really activate the space, bring it to life, bring people here. Think of it as a tool. So often in Philadelphia, we don't want to recognize that there still exists social segregation, racial segregation, economic segregation. It exists in our city. And what we believe is that part of our role as the rail park is to bring people, to use it as a tool to bring people together to break down that social segregation. I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in West Philadelphia. If you know the area, I grew up on Thompson Street, 58th. That was between Lansdowne Avenue, where is the 10 trolley, and then Girard Avenue, which is the 15 trolley. Existed in my heyday, still exists today. As a kid, as a young boy, I knew I didn't cross the tracks. I knew that whether it was good or bad, because some areas on the other side of the tracks were better than the one I was in. But I knew that I just did not cross the tracks. If you've lived in urban America and you've lived in places where tracks exist, I bet you have this same understanding about how tracks are perceived in our communities. We want to change that. We want to use these tracks that we have as the rail park to break down those social segregations. So not that you only cross those tracks, but you come on those tracks and you participate as a community in the programs that we want to deliver. We break down the social segregation, the racial segregation, economic segregation. Chinese people interacting with black folk, white folk interacting with Puerto Ricans, low income with high income, educated with the less educated. Let's use the rail park to drive the type of community we want to have. That's our vision. It's a big job, and I got a lot of work to do, okay? And my job is really to think about programming it. So clearly, sustain, maintain, and secure. That's the Friends of the Rail Park. So we want to sustain a beautiful place. We want to secure it. We want to maintain it. Equally as important is to activate it, galvanize it, bring people to it. So that's a programmatic aspect. That's what we're thinking about it from a philosophical perspective of using the park as a tool. Let's bring some of all of your cultural activities to the park. Let's do some theater on the park. Let's bring some orchestra stuff on the park. And not only on the completed portion, but also on the uncompleted portion. I am not sure what my time is, but I know I'm trying to get through this so I can get off this stage. What's next? Everybody asks, Kaz, what's phase 2? I don't know. I've been in this job 6 months. I'm trying to get another employee to help me think that through. So I really don't know. I talked about the dirt, right? We don't own the dirt. We don't own it. Reading International, this is a real quick. Reading International, old company that exists as a result of the Reading Railroad Company, owns the entire Viaduct. It's a private entity. They move like molasses. They operate out of Los Angeles, and they run movie theaters in Australia. They are not really interested in the rail park. However, we still are deliberate, and there's some things going on, and we have light at the end of the tunnel. They've indicated to us, remember the advocacy effort work, they had to be part of that to say, yes, you know, we are all right with developing that as a park, but they just don't move fast. But the dirt is we don't own it. We don't own it. We don't own the stuff in the cut. Guess who owns that? SEPTA. And they are relatively good partners. Relatively. I like them. They like us. But just like the Reading International Company, they don't move too quickly. Now, I do take the regional line from time to time. I will give them shout-outs. My line runs fairly well. But doing infrastructure projects, in the middle of the hood, below grade, not so quickly. But they control the air rights. So on the cut, below grade, everything. So if this is street level and that's down there, they control everything to my feet. And then what we have as problematic is the developers or the property owners that can go over at ground level. And that's who we have to kind of really, you know, that's when I put on some gloves and everything like that. And I'm just starting that battle. And so over time, we are working with them, all of them, private, public. I said community colleges right there in the cut, owns a bunch of land right there. To work with them. Community college is one of our better partners and one of our stronger ones. And so once we control the dirt, we will be able to determine what might happen next, and the financial stack will also help us. It's public money, private money, foundation money. It took us $10.6 million to do a quarter mile. So if you multiply that by 2.75 miles, you know how much it's going to cost us, right? And it's very difficult. So what's next? That's the tunnel. That's another view. I think we should do the tunnel. I'm not sure. I'd like to both sides, but whomever gives me the money to do whatever I want to do is great. But what I think is next is, well, hold on. See, I'm almost to the end. Help me out. 1.5. Some people say, what's phase 2? I got phase 1 done. 1.5 looks like this. If you're standing at the corner of Broad Street here, going south, going north. This is the school district behind me where you all sitting. Right there sits this rail car. It's an original 1920s dining car. I used to call it the luxury dining car. Then one of the founders said, Kevin, I don't think it was so luxury. But it was a part of the Reading. So if you came in from Chestnut Hill on the line into the Reading terminal in the late 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you ate on there, you ate in this car, right? It became Levi's Diner. It sold bagels. It was it was a business that had squatted there. Only in Philadelphia can a person squat in the building and open up a legit business, right? We are trying to grab hold of this. You know who else? I saw SEPTA's involved, cities involved. I didn't mention them. They are also property owners. Conrail controls this. Oh my goodness, Conrail. Help me out, people. Anybody who got an uncle or a brother or a father in Conrail, I'm looking for every contact I can possibly get in that wide organization. But we look at this as a social enterprise, and we talk about innovative, we talk about fourth industrial, is that creative sector. For nonprofits, we got to create, I have to create for the Friends of the Rail Park so all of you can enjoy a sustainable organization. So we think of it as a social enterprise. What can I do here? I can put a cafe in here, right? And then allow that cafe, not an industrial kitchen, but just to serve food, something like our friends Cafe Lift or Elixir down at 10th Street. They could come in and put their, sell bagels and coffee from 9 to 2. And then from 3 to 7, I can use it as a community space. I've now created revenue for our organization that will drive and benefit the mission of the nonprofit. And I also get the opportunity to do some community programming, some space there. Maybe I'll have some office hours. My board, when I came on board, they were like, I was like, where's the office? They were like, you figure that out. And I was like, cool, I'm working out at 754 GreatPHL Road for a little while, right? And then they said, no, why don't you do the rail car? I said, nah, that's not for me. I know, you know, it's a great space. And they were really gun-ho in my office. I was like, it just does not work. Let's create it as a community workspace that we can provide to the community. Maybe, if you've been up there, and this is a little hint, you might want to go to the bathroom beforehand. We don't even have bathrooms out there. So why not create some bathrooms right there, and then it will solve some of the problems we have. Social enterprise, revenue generator for the nonprofit, directed towards the mission, community space that we could do educational program, high school program, kids program, tours, and maybe I can have some office hours out of the place. I'm so proud that I am in the Kismet space. We just took some space there. So the organizers here, Chris Plant, we thank you very much for the opportunity. We are so enjoying that space down in Spring Arts Building. I invite all of you to try to check it out. So that is phase 1.5. I'm coming to an end. I need your help. Don't you want to get on the choo-choo? Choo-choo. This is how you get in touch with us. Thank you so very much.